Here is the answer. Part of these 700,000, first of all, it is 500,000, because those who live in East Jerusalem will have a different solution for them. And we are speaking about those who live in the West Bank. In the West Bank, most of these people, of the 500,000, will be part of Israel. Their areas will be annexed to Israel, and it is not so difficult because most of these people live on the very, very close to the old border, what is called the Green Line. According to our suggestion, we are speaking about an annexation of 2.25% of the West Bank, which is really a very minor one, and this will be compensated fully in quality and quantity from Israeli sovereign land. So they will find their solution. There will be, according to the current number, if this is going to be the border, 170,000 settlers who will find themselves in the Palestinian state. Now, they are the one, if they want to go to Israel, fine. And the number will be, of course, much lower. But if they want to stay there, or part of them will stay there, they will be Israeli citizens and Palestinian permanent residents, and the same number of Palestinian citizens will be allowed to Israel as permanent residents. This is the solution that we suggest in that context, but it is not, of course, as you said, the only context.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. It's widely believed that a two-state solution is the answer to the Israel-Palestine impasse. But the two-state solution itself is beset with its own problems. Unless a way is found to resolve them, a two-state solution is unlikely to happen. My guests today have devised a concept that seeks to do just that. It's called the Holy Land Confederation, and it could be the novel solution the situation requires. Joining me now are the authors of the idea, Israel's former Justice Minister Yossi Beilin, and a former legal advisor to the Palestinian negotiations team, Hiba Husseini. Dr. Beilin, your report says, and I'm quoting, the Holy Land Confederation is proposed as a means for facilitating a two-state solution, not as a substitute for it. So would I be right in saying that it's a way of resolving the issues and problems that a two-state solution would create?
This is true. I mean, today, when you say that you support the two-state solution, it's fine, but it's not enough, because if you don't tell us, how can you deal with the occupied territories? Are you going to evacuate the settlers or something like that? Then you really don't say enough about the solution. And I think that anybody who believes in such a solution, and it is a consensus in the whole world, although in our part of the world there are Israelis and there are Palestinians who oppose it. But if you suggest something like that, you must tell us how do you deal with the major impediment right now, the settlers and the settlements, because when we signed the Oslo agreement, there were 90,000 settlers in the West Bank. Today it is 500,000 if you don't count East Jerusalem. So it must be solved, and we are, as you said, suggesting a solution.
Dr. Husseini, your report says that the Holy Land Confederation calls for the cohabitation of the two sovereign states. What specifically do you mean by that word, cohabitation?
Well, thank you very much. Well, we didn't use the term cohabitation because that could be misleading. What we used is to have some sort of a confederation, because cohabitation does not connotate that you have two sovereign states. The facilitation of the two-state solution under the confederal idea that we are proposing requires, number one, to have two sovereign states. So there will be a recognition of the state of Palestine by the state of Israel, and of course, vice versa. And the two states will enter into the Confederation. Then what it means in terms of practical steps on the ground is that the two states will share certain resources, for example, water resources, environmental issues, coordinate on issues related to movement and access. What we're proposing also as a novel idea is to have the entire old city an open space for the two people and the visitors to move freely and openly, without walls, without borders, in the old city where the most of the holy sites are located. So we coordinate on security matters, we coordinate on economic matters, as I said, natural resources and so forth and so on. But there will be hard borders between the two states.
At one point, the phrase cohabitation is actually from your executive summary. I understand the distinction you're drawing, but that phrase is from your executive summary.
I stand corrected.
Now, Dr. Beilin, let's come to how some of the key issues and concerns are resolved by the Holy Land Confederation, because that's the first big challenge that has to be tackled. It says, and I'm quoting from your executive summary, an agreed upon number of citizens from both sides will be allowed to live in the other side as permanent residents, provided they commit themselves to respect the laws of their host countries. Is that how you propose to resolve the presence of, I believe, 700,000 Israeli settlers in the West Bank?
Well, here is the answer. Part of these 700,000, first of all, it is 500,000, because those who live in East Jerusalem will have a different solution for them. And we are speaking about those who live in the West Bank. In the West Bank, most of these people, of the 500,000, will be part of Israel. Their areas will be annexed to Israel. And it is not so difficult because most of these people live on the very, very close to the old border, what is called the Green Line. According to our suggestion, we are speaking about an annexation of 2.25% of the West Bank, which is really a very minor one, and this will be compensated fully in quality and quantity from Israelis' sovereign land. So they will find their solution. There will be, according to the current number, if this is going to be the border, 170,000 settlers who will find themselves in the Palestinian state. Now, they are the one, if they want to go to Israel, fine. And the number will be, of course, much lower. But if they want to stay there, or part of them will stay there, they will be Israeli citizens and Palestinian permanent residents, and the same number of Palestinian citizens will be allowed to Israel as permanent residents. This is the solution that we suggest in that context, but it is not, of course, as you said, the only context.
Tell me, Dr. Husseini, an equally pressing concern is the Palestinian diaspora, many of whom, if not all of whom, want a right of return. How will you accommodate that desire?
Okay, the idea of returning the refugees, the majority will be returning to the state of Palestine. The other category would include those who would be reunited with certain family members in the state of Israel. This is the proposal that we are making, that indeed the refugees have a right of return. It will be exercised to the state of Palestine with consideration to other categories, as I said.
So, in other words, both of you have talked of solutions which make a certain virtue out of the existing situation. The settlers that are there will be deemed to be permanent residents and allowed to continue, even though they will be Israeli citizens. And similarly, the Palestinian diaspora that wishes to return will be free to return to the Palestinian state. It's an acceptance of reality. Am I right?
No, because we don't compare the issue of the refugees to the issue of the settlers. The issue of the settlers will be solved separately, and the equivalent number will be those who are already or will become Palestinian citizens and would like to remain Palestinian citizens and become Israeli residents. On top of it, there will be a number of Palestinian refugees from whichever, that will be allowed to live in Israel as full citizens. And that will be the solution on, besides what Hiba said before about third countries and, of course, the Palestinian state itself, for the Palestinian refugees. Now, what will be the number of these refugees? If you read our paper, we are suggesting that the number will take into account the average number of Palestinian refugees who were absorbed by third countries. This is the idea that we suggest.
How large is that number in your eyes, Dr. Husseini? How large is the number of Palestinian refugees who you believe will want to return to Palestine?
Well, I mean, the number of refugees to begin with is contentious because there are different categories for calculating the number, be it the UN numbers, be it the Israel numbers, be it the general Palestinian refugee number. By our Palestinian count, they are over 6 million because we count generations. Israel has a different count, so this is a matter to be negotiated for sure. But in terms of those who want to return to the state of Palestine, we believe that it's mostly the refugees who are in the Lebanon camps, in the Syria camps, and some of those who are in Jordan that have not. Other categories have become citizens elsewhere in Europe, in Canada, in Australia, some even in the US. So they're unlikely to want to come back as refugees into the state of Palestine, based on surveys that we have conducted and so forth. But ultimately, so that I make this very short, because it's a very complicated, very delicate issue, ultimately it's the refugee who decides. The refugee is going to be given the choice to decide where to return and to what extent that choice can be accommodated. Because also there's another category that will receive compensation and reparations. So there are several international berules that govern the treatment of refugees.
I understand. Dr.
But
Beilin,
if I may add one sentence, we will not have a dispute about the number of Palestinian refugees in the world. Why? Because if we are speaking about a certain number of Palestinians, which will be, as I said before, the average number of those who were absorbed elsewhere. So this will be the number. And I presume that it will be the Palestinian government, which will say we have a queue of, I don't know what, 1 million Palestinians who would like to return. But according to our agreement, the number should be only 35,000 or 40,000 or whatever. And these are the people, this is the list that we recommend to you, Israel, to absorb fully.
Okay. Now, Dr. Beilin, what will be the status of Jerusalem under the Holy Land Confederation? Your concept says it will be a fully open city. What exactly does that mean?
No, it will not be a fully open city. First of all, we are speaking about a gradual process. we will have borders, we will have customs, we will have all these things. But during the years, we are following the footsteps of the European Union, and we believe that it will be possible to erase borders, physical borders. In the map, they will stay forever, and other things, so that it will be much easier to move from one place to another, and so on and so forth. About Jerusalem, the Jerusalem, as Hiba said before, will have two parts. Part of it is the old city, and there it will be free movement from tomorrow, once we sign the agreement. The other parts of Jerusalem will have to wait and see. And then the two governments are committed in 4 years to meet again and to discuss, among other things, the regime of the border regime. And among other issues of the border regime will be, of course, Jerusalem itself. Maybe in the future, it will be, as you said, a total open city, but not at the beginning.
No, absolutely not at the beginning. But again, I'm holding up your executive summary. It does say that this includes turning Jerusalem into a fully open city. But I assume that is an end target, not
exactly. This is the vision. This is the vision.
Tell me, Dr. Husseini, both the Palestinians and the Israelis want Jerusalem as their capital. Will it be divided equally between them, or will it be equal to both of them?
Definitely, we both want Jerusalem to be our capital. The borders will be negotiated. I mean, Jerusalem, the municipality of Jerusalem already has defined borders. East Jerusalem already has defined borders. It's true that over the last years, since 1967 to date, there has been a significant infrastructure change and a characteristic change to East Jerusalem. Some parts will be swapped. Some parts will be negotiated. So the equal, as Dr. Beilin said, whatever is going to be exchanged and swapped in terms of territory will be of equal value and equal quality. So basically, the Palestinians and Israelis will eventually negotiate that border of the two capitals.
Okay, but if they are lazy, they have the border in your book.
In other words, you've got a recommendation to give them to help them along.
We did everything. We did everything. And it is based on the Geneva Initiative of 2003 with 500 very boring pages of annexes. So on every issue, the refugees, whatever you say, we are suggesting full solutions. Nothing is open-ended. But of course, we are not those who will decide. And if the leaders on both sides want to have something, want to change something or whatever, they for sure will do that.
Absolutely.
But we did something crazy.
Let's at this point come to some of the governance details as you've discussed them and mentioned them in your report as well as in your executive summary. You say, Dr. Beilin, the two states would maintain their own governmental institutions and independent judicial systems. But would they be free to choose whatever governmental institutions and judicial system they want, or are religiously determined institutions and religiously determined judicial systems precluded?
I don't believe that we should really be too much involved with what is happening on the Palestinian side. We tried to, and the Palestinians agreed then during the Oslo process, and even beforehand in the Madrid conference, after the Madrid conference of 91. And we shouldn't. I mean, we have our own ideas about the proper regime, and the Palestinians have their own, and they will vote and decide who will lead them. And I think that the less the merrier. The less the merrier.
In other words, each side will be free to determine its own government structures for itself.
Exactly.
Yes, if I may add, I think the idea here, as I said, I mean, when you have two sovereign states, then you have the institutions of each sovereign state. So we will not propose, we are not proposing there will be one parliament. We are not proposing there will be one government. We are not proposing that we will have one municipality for Jerusalem, for example. So the idea, again, is very flexible and takes into account the two sovereigns, the two entities as independent entities. So the judiciary in Palestine, first, I mean, the laws already are different between the two states. So the laws in Palestine will be based on what we have here today, and Israel will have its own judicial system, its own parliament, and so forth and so on. So there will be a separation. What we are proposing is coordination, again, in terms of institutions in key areas, so that we minimize the relationship. We maximize the cooperation between the two states
Can I pick
at the
you up on that?
institutional level.
Can I pick you up on that, Dr. Husseini? Because in the case of Jerusalem, your report says a joint committee would tackle issues such as municipal planning, supervision of the holy places, the use of natural resources, etc. How will members of this joint committee be chosen? And will the joint committee be supreme of itself, or will it be under some other authority on either side?
We are analyzing this matter right now with certain experts, and the report is not out yet. So yes, we have taken into account the fact that we need to flesh this out further, and we are doing it. But there will be very close coordination, especially for the old. Remember, the old city will be open. So we have to coordinate movement. We have to coordinate. People live in the old city. You have Israelis, you have Palestinians, you have the churches, you have the mosques, you have the synagogues, you have the holy sites that people go in and pray. They live there, so they have to receive health services, they have to receive municipal service, even garbage collection, water supply, so forth and so on. All of these details are being fleshed out right now as we speak.
Dr. Beilin, your report says, and again, I'm quoting from the report, the Holy Land Confederation would be formed only after the creation of the Palestinian state. Doesn't that mean that your report can only be implemented after there's a willingness to create a two-state solution? And the problem is, at the moment, politicians like Netanyahu, Smotrich, and Ben-Gvir, who are the ones in power in Israel, are firmly against a two-state solution.
You are right in your assumption and in your evaluation.
So what's the solution?
The solution? There won't be an agreement if these two people that you mentioned and their colleagues will remain in the Israeli government. So we are working for a future which we hope will not be too far.
Dr. Husseini, your report says the Palestinian state would encompass 22.5% of historic Palestine. That's very small. Would that be acceptable to the Palestinian people? And what about their politicians?
Well, historic Palestine is already divided, as we very well know. The reality on the ground that has been negotiated, we are proposing that based on also swaps. So there will be exchanges of territory, and swaps will take place so that we can maximize the area of the state of Palestine. This is a big compromise indeed. It will include Gaza, and it will include the West Bank, including Area C. And of course East Jerusalem as will be negotiated. But I agree, it is not what many Palestinians want. It's a compromise of major proportions. Yes.
If I may add to it. We had a very good friend, both of us, Hiba and myself, Yossi Beilin, the late Yossi Beilin. And he was one of the main negotiators of the main negotiators for decades. And he always said publicly, not only to me, he said, give me 6,208 square kilometers. This is what I need. I don't tell you where even. This is the 22.5% that we deserve. This is what we had after the 48 war, and this is what we need. And this is the requirement of the Palestinians. It is not something which was imposed on the Palestinians, neither in our paper nor in others. The only question is where. And of course, we don't suggest to move them, the Palestinians, to Mozambique or something like that, although it is a nice place. But the idea is that it will be, as I said, 2.5% of the West Bank will be annexed to Israel. This is the whole story. I think that it is modest, it is fair, and you have the map again. We are
Dr. Husseini, you're nodding your head. Is that in agreement or is that with a certain amount of reservation?
No, it's not a question of reservation or agreement. It's a fact, unfortunately, whether I like it or not, whether some Palestinians like it or not. This is the 22% plus is the area, as Dr. Beilin said, of the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, as will be again swapped in terms of the territory to maintain that percentage. It's not just we're not talking about the settlement areas that have expanded into the West Bank or East Jerusalem. We are talking about most of these settlements, remember, will be evacuated. Those that are not will be swapped. So it's an equation that has been discussed with the PLO, that has been discussed in Oslo, that has been discussed in further negotiations up until the time of the Annapolis discussions. So the percentage, give or take 2%, 5%, is the negotiating room.
Dr. Beilin, how do you propose to take this concept further and garner popular support from within Israel? What measures do you have in mind to get your own countrymen and countrywomen to support it?
First of all, we did something crazy, which everybody told us there is no chance to do, and that is a joint narrative. I hope that you read it. It is in the first time, it was never done before. The Palestinians and Israelis wrote their story together and found out that we don't have to quarrel about every fact in our history. It is true that we see it subjectively, and we are usually justifying the motivations of our side. But it doesn't mean that we cannot tell the story together and not as two separate stories totally.
I understand that, but what steps are you taking to get your own countrymen and countrywomen to support this concept?
So this should be done on the two sides. And we are going from place to place. We are talking about it as much as we can, although the current situation, I don't have to tell you, is not very welcoming to new detailed ideas of peace. But we must have peace. This is the national interest of the Palestinians. It is the national interest of the Israelis. And if we don't do that, both of us are doomed. And this is what we have to explain. It is in your benefit. You are not doing any favor to the Palestinians by making peace, and vice versa. It is a selfish book for those who believe in peace.
Dr. Husseini, have you discussed this concept with the Palestine Authority, with the Fatah leadership?
Yes, definitely. We shared this. I mean, first of all, we have it translated into Arabic and Hebrew. So the Arabic version of the book went to President Abbas, went to several of his advisors, And we have discussed it with them, but it has not developed further in terms of next steps, because the situation on the ground, as has been pointed out, with the current Israeli government, it's very difficult to engage. So it's one of the most solid proposals to achieve the two-state solution. It's the enabler. So they encouraged us to continue working. They accepted that we should develop it further. And when it comes time to negotiating, it would be one of those most important tools to be taken up, because the level of detail in it and the more work that we're doing on it right now, actually, to develop it further, is something of interest to them, yes.
Dr. Beilin, we're coming towards the end of this interview, but I must ask you, if this Holy Land Confederation concept is to fructify and become acceptable, you would presumably need support from the United States as well. Have you taken any steps to ensure that Washington supports your idea?
Well, I don't believe that this will be the impediment. The impediment are at home. And the impediments are at home. We were to the United States. Hiba met with Secretary Blinken. We both met with people in Foggy Bottom and with
Capitol
people
Hill.
in the Senate, in the Congress. And actually, I can tell you what is the usual reaction. We met with many people, with foreign ministers, with prime ministers in the last 2 years. The general attitude is so obvious. They say, wonderful that you Israelis and Palestinians, because it is not only the two of us, it is a group of people on each side, that you could agree on things that the world believes that it is impossible to, insoluble. It is soluble. We, the world, will support anything that you agree upon. If you at home can get the support for it, which is something that you mentioned before. So it is true that it is important for us to convince the world, and this is what we are trying to do, but the main aim is to convince our own public opinions.
Dr. Husseini, your document also says that if the Holy Land Confederation is considered a success, other parties in the region, like Jordan, could join its different aspects on a mutually agreed upon basis. Have you had any consultations or discussions with the government in Amman?
Yes, we've had several consultations. Sorry, that's another phone which I forgot to turn off. We've had several consultations with officials in Jordan, and we are doing some of it right now, actually. The idea, again, for the government of Jordan is for the state of Palestine to be created, the two states, Israel and Palestine, accepting to go into this confederation. Then Jordan, this is their position, would consider going into a confederation on select areas, coordinating on economic matters, coordinating on security matters. We also should remember that Jordan, the King Abdullah himself, and the government of Jordan under the Wadi Araba agreement, they have a certain role in terms of the waqf over the holy sites in Jerusalem. So that we envisage a role for them to continue and to be developed further. So it would be a natural development in due course, but it won't happen right away.
I thank both of you for explaining to an audience in India the Holy Land Confederation, and for the fact that it seeks, in a very imaginative and thoughtful way, to find a solution to the impediments that otherwise the two-state solution throws up. Thank you very much for the time you've given me. I wish both of you good luck.
Thank you very much.